Good morning, and welcome to the Thursday reflection and the continuing story of Holy Week. Let us begin with a short prayer. Father, quieten our minds, still our hearts, for your living ways are all we seek. Strengthen our lives, inspire our spirits. May we have faith and receive the fullness of your blessing. One God, now and forever. Amen. Our reading this morning comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 1 to 17. Jesus washes his disciples' feet. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said, "Not everyone was clean." When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." Amen. Today is Maundy Thursday, which is also known as Holy Thursday, and is the name given to the day on which Jesus celebrated the Passover with his disciples. Many events occurred on this day, but this morning we are looking at Jesus washing the disciples' feet and what that means for us. The disciples had gathered with Jesus to celebrate Passover, and there would be a lot of talk and celebration. The disciples had previously been arguing as to who was the greatest among them, and spirits would be high. Once the meal had started, Jesus did something unheard of. He took off his outer garments, put a towel round his waist, and began washing the feet of the disciples. Why did he do this? And why were the disciples so stunned? To understand this, we have to know something about life in the 1st century AD. Walking in sandals on the filthy roads of Israel made it necessary that feet be washed before a communal meal, especially since people reclined at a low table and feet were very much in evidence. So, feet were washed before a meal. However, it was usually a servant who would normally undertake this act. When Jesus rose from the table and began to wash the feet of the disciples, he was doing the work of the lowliest of the servants. The disciples must have been stunned at this act of humility, that Christ, their Lord and Master, should wash their feet, when they should in fact have washed his. As was said before, the disciples were in high spirits, and it hadn't crossed their minds to wash their feet before they sat down, and there doesn't appear to be a servant there to do it. So when Jesus stooped to do this lowly task, they must have been stunned into silence. Peter especially seems to be uncomfortable with the Lord washing his feet, and protested, saying, "You shall never wash my feet." Then Jesus said something that must have further shocked Peter. Unless I wash you, you have no part with me," prompting Peter to request a complete washing. Then Jesus explained the true meaning of being washed by him. Peter had experienced the cleansing of salvation and did not need to be washed again in the spiritual sense. Jesus' washing of the feet of his disciples came with so much significance in this intimate moment for both his disciples and for all of us who strive to follow his example and teachings. This selfless act displayed Jesus' amazing humility. He took the role of a servant to wash the dusty and dirt-covered feet of his disciples. Jesus was setting an incredible example of what it is to be Christ-like through his humble actions. Status, pride, or even dirt did not stop him from rolling up his sleeves to serve the men who had been at his side throughout the duration of his ministry. Jesus' entire life was a lesson and example to the disciples. Here, however, he felt it was important to specifically draw attention to the lesson he had just done. The washing of their feet meant something, and Jesus would not leave the understanding of that up to chance. What he is really saying is to be humble and serve each other, not to want to rule over others. Accept whatever position God has called you to. You are not to act arrogantly to each other, to be humble and help each other, not just in washing of feet, but in every way. Jesus cared so very much about the details of his followers' lives. He wanted them to continue to live their lives in the way he had lived his. He was willing to get messy, to reach, to teach, and to show undeserved love to the disciples, and this is still true today. Jesus cares about even the most minute details of our lives. None of our fears are too small, needs too silly, or stresses too insignificant that he does not care about them. Jesus' actions in this passage set an example of what it means to follow him in our lives. We are to try to live our lives with humility and not be too proud to take on the humblest of tasks. Jesus says to be happy. You must not be striving to be better than someone else, but to be content with whatever God has called you to be, and then you will be happy. Let us close with a prayer. God of dirty hands and tired feet, taking people as they come, kneeling and healing, touching where others turn away. Forgive us when we want to be too clean. Forgive us when we despise life for the messy business it is. Let us reflect today upon the truths Jesus taught us and help us to grow in humility and gratitude. Amen.